Right, guys. So we are at mock 24. Yep. Long way into the journey now, and I hope your preparation is going quite well. Yeah. So let's see. How do we tackle this? Santa has asked the RBI to consider July as the starting month for inflation targeting, as it was a break in inflation series April to May. Apex Bank will not submit a report as to why has it failed in targeting for 3 quarters running starting January. RBI Act, Central Bank unable to meet inflation target for 3 quarters in a row, sent a report to the center, citing reasons for failure to achieve target remedial actions. Estimate of time period within the inflation target shall be achieved after the implementation of remedial actions. In what could face of work, the government is now asked to consider retail inflation data from the quarter beginning July 2020. Centre taking refuge in the break in CPIC April and May, which had prompted it to give an imputed inflation data for these 2 months. January, this inflation stayed above 6% mark. CPI inflation in September, upper band of 6%. Nomura note the sharp unseasonal and vegetable prices is likely to keep headline inflation elevated around 7% in September. Murthy Nagarajan of Tata Mutual Fund said like headline inflation remain elevated in the near term. Okay. 6.5%, 6.9, 6.52. Okay. Tarun Bajaj in RBI is saying that the imputed CPI data of April May do not reflect the true state of the price situation in the economy from the perspective of monetary policy. For assessing the failure to meet inflation target, the RBI is not allowed to include inflation data, so the central accountability to meet inflation target will be from July 2020 quarter. Government bench appointed RBI senior most executive M. Rajeshwar Rao, Deputy Governor of Central Bank, vacated by NS Vishwanathan, stepped down 3 months ahead of his tenure, extended tenure on health grounds. RBI had mentioned 3 quarters in a row, so inflation numbers for the rest of the months cannot be counted. MPC said that the NSO had not provided inflation rates for April and May for the purpose of monetary formulation and conduct. Okay. The government's move should relate to the reconstituted MPC retain the repo rate at 4%. Okay. If the central bank fails to achieve inflation, which of the following is likely to be a part? I think we read this here. It is estimated we would be able to control inflation by the end. See, now this is a time period, so this will be a part. The rise in was majorly resulted. I am citing a reason. मैंने पढ़ा है. It is advisable to control inflation through 5 basis point change in repo rate. I am giving a remedial action. Simple. All 3 will be part. So what is my answer? All of the above. Khatam. Which of the following arguments fails to strengthen the RBI stand of not submitting a report for inflation? For not submitting, the incessant record of CPI will not give a clear picture. Yes. If the report is not giving a clear picture, why will I submit a report? So this does make sense to me. Oh wait, fails to strengthen, guys. Again, question पढ़ना देखिए कितना important होता है. I would have just fallen into the trap. So this is wrong. This gives me the reason. The headline inflation grew due to sudden change price of oil. No, wait. This is the reason for the failure. So he has to give it. इस basis पे नहीं दे रहा है, so it is failing to strengthen the RBI stand. So this is the right answer. Then this is wrong, and then automatically this is also wrong. Likely to account for rise in headline inflation. Headline inflation. Yeah. Tata Mutual Fund also has a headline to remain elevated near-term accounts of higher food, MSP for farmers will food, fuel, rise in oil, gold price, fine jewelry, all 3. So it's my answer is all of the above. In the context of the passage, what is likely reason the repo rate is expected to remain unchanged? रेपो रेट के बारे में तो सर यहाँ बात किया है कि अनचेंज रख रहे हैं to bring some relief. I can't really relate options here. I'll skip this out. Artificial sweeteners hold the promise of satisfying a sweet tooth without the downside of excess calories, and they're increasingly used in products from diet sodas, powdered drink mixes to yogurt, baked goods. Whether using them to prevent weight gain has been a long open question. Has long been an open question. Now, some studies are providing answers. Researchers find artificial sweeteners can be useful as a tool to help people kick their sugar habits, and therefore, some people replacing sugar with non-nutritive sweeteners can indeed help stave off weight gain. But some experts say are concerning and they caution against consuming them routinely for long periods of time. The idea we need to get rid of is that because they have zero calories, they have metabolic effects. Okay. Purchases of food, beverages containing sugar substitutes have risen. Health conscious consumers cut back on sugar. Okay, stevia, zero calorie plant, fine. The report published in this, okay. What happened to soda drinkers when they shift 203 adults, one sugary beverage, some of them were overweight. Okay, only some were overweight. Three groups. Deliveries of artificially sweetened beverages substitute those for the usual, okay, plain and sparkling water, normal pattern of sugary beverages. Did not find overall difference in weight gain or other markers of metabolic health. Okay. Who had high levels of abdominal obesity, the results were striking. Carried the most fat around their midsection, the major risk factor metabolic, had significantly less weight gain when they switched from sugary drinks to diet beverages or water. Gained a pound during the study. Water lost a pound. High levels of belly fat gained 10 pounds. Okay, pronounced effect on weight gain, but non-nutritive sweeteners may be many hundreds of times sweeter than sugar appear to do more than just activate taste receptors. Spur changes in gut micro, disrupt blood sugar control, promote a preference for intensely sweet foods. Interesting. Okay. Which of the following statements are authored? Zero calories means zero effect on weight. No. ये देखो डाइट बेवरेजेस जिन्होंने पिया है उनका भी वेट बढ़ा है आउट non-nutritive sweeteners tend to reduce sensitivity to sweet taste. Okay, non-nutritive sweeteners, which may be many hundreds of sweetened sugar, appear to do more than just activate taste receptors. They spur changes in gut micro, disrupt blood sugar, and they promote a preference for intensely sweet foods. Sensitivity घटा रहा है क्योंकि इतना ज्यादा sugar है. That means that guy is wanting more and more sugar. So sensitivity to the sugar level is reducing. That is why he's wanting more intense foods. This is the reason I have chalked out over here. So this is right, this is wrong, this is wrong. Characteristics of artificial sweeteners. Okay. Here, they have effects on hormones, blood sugar. Blood sugar control disruption is a word I can't satisfy. Create hormonal imbalance, makes sense. Help reduce weight, no, we have seen it gains weight. So you have to choose between A and B. I will go with B because the word disrupt is a little extreme in my opinion. Who among the following candidates are likely to experience maximum weight gain? Okay, he's a little overweight, sedentary, diet coke. Obese with a pot belly. अब हमने क्या पढ़ा है guys यहाँ पे? We have read that people who carried the most fat around the midsections had significantly less weight gain when they shifted to diet. Okay, and 10 pounds for people who had high belly fat and consumed sugary drinks. Junk food, overweight. So I think I would go with this. You know, he's still consuming junk, that is sugar, and he has a big pot belly, not just little overweight. So I'll go with B. Tone of the pageant, speculative. There's no particular speculation over here. Facts I will go with because he's telling me things about a particular study. He's giving me some facts and figures, etc. So I think factual makes sense. He's not biased. He's not saying whether non-nutritive sweeteners are good or bad. So he's not biased. Humanistic, it's not a particularly humane or a social issue point of view article to begin with. So I think factual is okay. Yeah. Okay. There's a cinema in Southeast London called Peckham Plex, favorite places globally, bottom of car park, 1990s dream world, aesthetics could be an affection, market to affluent timeout readers, retro style cinema selling gourmet popcorn, 13-pound cocktails, the Mia Wallace. It's looked this way since it opened in 94. Even better is the price. Every film is £5. That's reflecting the demographics of the people who go there. It is a place that serves the community, but not in a lofty and improving way. Sometimes people just want to take their kids to a Marvel film without spending too much money. Closing temporarily, citing low levels of admission, a local story upset a devoted local clientele. But it was subsequent news that Cineworld was also temporarily closing its doors had brought problems facing the industry to national attention. With Boris Johnson urging people to go to cinema, but the government offering them extra subsidies, it is understandable that most people focused on the possible economic outcomes of cinemas closing for good. The job losses, knock-on effects on restaurant bars, commercial rents, making the economic case is important, but I don't think it is sufficient. It seems like the current iteration capitalism would take the end of everything that makes life bearable and stride trundling on without bars, restaurants, football, or cinemas. It is just as vital to think about what you're losing as the culture of cinemas dwindle or cease to exist altogether. Interdiction is practically a default setting, something valuable to center in a space where you will be shunned hissed at for glancing at your phone. Kind of a flotation tank. Almost everyone I knew struggles to put their phone away when they're watching a film at home. The perilous state of cinema speaks to a larger problem. Last 20 years, I've seen a decline in socializing. Okay, go out less, fewer dates. We are living in an era of platform capitalism where you can do just about anything without leaving your home, are encouraged to do so. The decline of going out is a pre existing trend, but one that the pandemic will accelerate. Plenty of dressing gown loving homebodies has already settled into this nicely. As this publics were eroded even further in the next few years, many of them will react with throttling indifference. So, as long as they can still order takeaways and watch content on multiple entertainment platforms. This dressing gown capitalism has done well out of COVID, with both streaming and takeaway apps enjoying a surge in usage, helped by the fact that staying in has come to be seen as morally virtuous. The government rather than consumer preferences. Okay, fine. So, which of the following statement best states the author's fear about closure of cinema? Fear. Adults would lose the important option for second or third date. What? When did he talk about dates? Out. People suffer more depression as we lose vital elements of our culture. It seems that the current make end everything that makes life bearable. Okay, it'll end everything that makes life bearable. That is all these. So that means mental pressure. So I think I can go with this, and he's also saying that people have declined in socializing. Spend time watching a movie, wouldn't be able to is an extreme statement. I think I'll go with B. How will human reacts as most activity in social sphere see a diminishing trend? Here. As the public sphere is eroded even further in the next few years, many of them will react with chortling indifference. Bhai, farak hi nahi padega. As long as they can still order takeaways and watch content at home. That is out here. least bothered, indifferent, spending time at home. Perfect. Which of the following best in theme? The social impact of cinema closure, significance of cinema, economic impact. So the economic impact is not important, he mentioned. Addiction to internet in pandemic times is a very narrow thing. He says this is going on from pre-pandemic era, pre-existing trend. Cinema and human life, social impact of cinema closure. I think he's talking about a lot of social issues over here, mental problems, socializing. So I think I'll go with A. Basis the points put up as a passage, lifestyle, where a person enjoys being a couch potato, no, physically active routine, loves to spend time indoors, enriched social life. So now it's linking to the previous answer also. So he wants people to go out, socialize, interact. So I think D makes the most sense. Okay. Many commentators paint a bleak picture of the future of work. Automation will spread, okay, workforce will be divided into a new technocratic elite and a mass of low-skilled, insecure jobs and the precariat. But it does not need to be this way. To management consulting humanocracy, optimistic as this title is off-putting. Envisage a world in low-skilled jobs can be enhanced if only employees are given a chance to use their initiative and change the way they operate. What makes a job low-skilled is not the nature of work it entails or the credentials required, but whether or not the people performing the task have the opportunity to grow their capabilities and tackle novel problems. If managers relax the centralizing tendencies and devolve power to individual business units, few bigger companies have followed this path. The authors finger the dead hand of bureaucracy. Since 1983, number of managers and administrators in the American workforce has more than doubled, while employment in other occupation has gone only up by only 44%. One of the executives of published in HBR found that the average respondent worked in an organization with 6 management layers, in large 8 or more. After 27% of the time on bureaucratic chores such as writing documents or documenting compliance. The result of all this paperwork is the corporate organization promotes conformity and dull enterprise. It wedges people into narrow roles, stymies personal growth, and treats humans as mere resources. They emphasize a different model. All employees should be encouraged to think like business people, be organized into smaller teams, own P&L, and be allowed to experiment. Units within decentralized companies will be able to negotiate the price of services and products provided by the rest of the group. The book is full of practical examples. A desk provider of home health services split into more than 1,200 self-organizing teams, finding clients, recruiting workers. Okay, 15,000 employees to have central staff of just over 100 people. Another decentralized group is Nucor, American Steel Company. 75 divisions, own R&D, bonuses paid to teams. Teams take the initiative. Beauty of the approach, the authors argue, is that employees are more satisfied and motivated. This can lead to reduced staff turnover, higher profits, 20.5 million manager supervisors, 3.2 trillion in compensation, nearly a third of the national wage bill. We're halving compliance costs. Okay. Such a cull would be bad news for some managers, of course. It could also be disruptive in the short term. Too many people are dissatisfied with their job. Unleash their creativity and productivity will improve job satisfaction, and workers will be free to demonstrate abilities. The future needn't be gloomy at all. Great. Which of the following organizational steps has the author talked? Okay. I remember. ऐसा कुछ कहाँ पढ़ा? Here. This. Motivated to bear, encouraged to think like business people, entrepreneurial mindset, fine. Flat hierarchy, decentralized companies is a flat hierarchy. So A and B mil gaya. I will just check this. Go ahead. Which are the following about paperwork? Yeah, bureaucratic chores, paperwork. People are unable to grow, personal growth is diminished, compromises entrepreneurial mindsets. I think he'll go ahead with everything is mentioned over here. And see, narrow roles, time is growth, mere resources. Future of work isn't gloomy when employees are given opportunities to be creative. Here, unleash their creativity. Productivity will improve. Job satisfaction will increase. So I think option A, better pay, no. Individual, all decision individually is a little extreme. I will not go ahead with that. So option number A have not been put forward. Individual can take initiatives to innovate, experiment, yes. Enhance productivity, okay. Confusing. I think I'll leave this out. Okay. Right. People seem to, it's wisdom. Okay, wait. Wisdom is one of the oldest topics in the intellectual history of humanity, and yet talking about wisdom can feel odd and disingenuous. Why? Why is it odd? It's easy to just tell, okay. People seem to have intuitions about who is and isn't wise. That is why it is difficult, because people don't know yet. But if you present it, they will hesitate. Wisdom with its mystical quality sits on a pedestal, inspiring awe and repetition. Acha, so we are giving a sort of a definition of wisdom over here and then saying it is easy to, mystically handle them in history and pop culture, but we are unable to apply it over here. So this makes up for the whole argument. Okay. So I think what we need to do is 3, 4, 1, 3, 2. Maybe some issue with that keyboard there. Of course. Now see, 3 is introducing a statement. Kant's critique of pure reason put a new spin on time. Time is rooted in his Kanta. He twists an argument made by absolutists. That is the new spin on time. He's twisted an argument. Many absolutists argued that we could not imagine deleting time from the universe. Even if we destroyed the universe, time would remain, implying that time exists independently of us. Kant argues that the fact that we cannot disimagine time doesn't tell anything about the universe. Instead, it tells us more something about our minds. Okay. Time is rooted in us. It's a form of thought. Human minds. Okay, so see, now human minds topic is coming from here. So this will continue here. So 3, 2, 4, 1 makes maximum sense. 3, 2, 4. Sorry. Okay. Okay, I think some issue with my PC. No issue. No issue. Okay, this is Mr. Zach. This. So, okay, wait. People were hungry during the lockdown. So Francis Zach, a Ugandan member of parliament, bought some rice and sugar and had it delivered to his neediest constituents. For this charitable act, he was arrested. Mr. Zach is a member of opposition. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has ordered. Why he was arrested? 3, 1, 2, 4. This was pretty easy. When a scientific paradigm breaks down, scientists need to make a leap into the unknown. There are moments of revolution identified by Thomas Kuhn in 60s, where scientists' worldview becomes untenable, agreed upon, and accepted truths of a particular discipline are radically called into question. Beloved theories are revealed to have been built upon sand. Achha. Explanation that have held for hundreds of years is now dismissed. A particular and productive way of looking at the world turns out to be erroneous in its essentials. The great scientific revolutions, such as those instigated by corporate Nicholas Galileo, Newton, Lavoisier, Einstein, and Wegener, are times of great uncertainty when cold, disinterested reason alone doesn't help scientists move forward. They need to take a leap into the unknown, basically. Scientific theories are built on weak ground and succumb after the logic fades to die. where is the talk about the leap into the unknown? It's not here, out. The scientists need to progress into undiscovered territory when scientific theories hit their limits. Sort of makes sense, yeah. Success in science can only be achieved only be achieved by working on unknown territory. That is not what it's saying. When theories which shape our understanding of science are flipped upside down because of the flawed logic, we need to leap into unknown territory. We need to leap, but the scientists need to leap, not we. See how one thing makes the whole thing wrong, guys. Option B. A singular figure in the history of alternative education, Neil was the son of Scottish Calvinists and a disciple of renegade psychiatrist Wilhelm Reich, and what you might call a hard-bitten idealist who had pursued a simple belief in the innate goodness of children with absolute commitment in the most minute practical detail. He never claimed to have lied to a child, and his writings contain numerous examples of uncomfortable honesty, such as when he made good on his promise to his daughter Zoe, will allow to smash up his prized piano. The aim of Summerhill, his book, was to foster a similar honesty in all members of the community. Okay. Fine, fine. But Neil, teaching honesty to children is not an objective thing, it is a mandatory thing. Okay, Neil focus on inculcating honesty. Okay, this is something I can understand in all members of the community. So this does make sense. Needs admission on comfortable truths, audacious visionary. Can't really go with that. Neil's vision to inculcate honesty in people in the acha. So this and this makes sense, but I have to also include this aspect which is coming from here. He was a singular figure in alternative education. So D. Okay. Nope, I don't really go for odd one outs. Okay.